A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to the national webinar on traditional blended online, a paradigm shift in teaching learning in higher education. The webinar is organized by the Central Library, Dhrupachand Haldar College, in collaboration with IQAC, Dhrupachand Haldar College. Now I request our principal sir, respected Dr. Satyabrat Sahu, to deliver the welcome address. Sir, please.
Good morning, everybody. Honorable Speaker, respected teachers, and respected participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's national webinar on traditional blended online, a paradigm shift in teaching learning in higher education, organized by Central Library, Dhrupachand Haldar College, in collaboration with IQAC of Dhrupachand Haldar College. Firstly, I would like to offer my thanks to Mrs. Sudeshna Moitro, librarian of Dhrupachand Haldar College and organizing secretary of this webinar, and Professor Sudokshina Sengupta, coordinator IQAC of Dhrupachand Haldar College and convener of this webinar. Special thanks to Dr. D.C. Chakraborty, Assistant Professor of Ashutosh College, for his technical support, and all other members of the organizing committee for their sincere effort to organize this webinar in this pandemic situation due to COVID-19. I am very much grateful to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Partha Sarothi Mukhopadhyay, Professor and Head of the Department of Library and Information Science, Kollam University, who have agreed to deliver his lecture in this webinar. I am very much thankful to him. I extend my warm welcome to him in this webinar. As we know, with education worldwide being thrown into disarray by coronavirus, more and more educators are being forced to teach their students from home. For the students, we must be aware that learning from home can be lonely for them. Without the buzz of the classroom setting and the company of their peers, it is no surprise that some students can begin to feel a strong sense of isolation that slowly erodes their desire to learn. Now we are forced to move towards online teaching. Maybe, perhaps it will be a regular teaching method for ours, because we don't know when we can get out of this crisis due to COVID-19 pandemic. There are several challenges in online teaching. Its quality, its effectiveness, which largely remain unaddressed. Comparing face-to-face learning with online learning brings forth significant deficiencies in the online mode of teaching, such as lack of eye contact with our students, absence of opportunities of collaborative learning, teacher supervision, and the most glaring being lack of opportunities for hands-on learning in complex subjects like mathematics and science. So how do we address the challenges of quality learning in online mode? And is it possible, just depending on technology and providing online learning resources, we ensure to provide quality teaching? On the other hand, teachers and students both are struggling with online teaching learning. because students mostly belonging to poor households suffers from issues such as no access to private computer or laptops or smartphones. Teachers, on the other hand, are facing some serious issues in adjusting to the digital medium. We are very much concerned about our students. We have the responsibility to build their future, so we shall try to offer our students the best possible opportunities to prepare them for any future challenge in the competitive world. Today's webinar is very much relevant at the present time. It is focused on online teaching learning, a real challenge to us. I hope for a grand success of this webinar. Some useful, carefully designed strategies may come up today, which may help us to navigate through the crisis. I am sure all of us will feel enriched with knowledge at the end of the lecture. I welcome you all once again to the webinar and hope next few hours will be very much beneficial and enjoyable for everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I request the IQAC coordinator of Dhrubachand Haldar College, respected Madam Sudakshina Sengupta, to introduce the theme of today's webinar. Madam, please.
Madam, unmute korun.
Sudakshina, unmute.
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, a very good morning to our respected speaker and to our respected principal, sir, and to all the participants who have joined in this webinar titled Traditional Blended Online, a Paradigm Shift in Teaching Learning in Higher Education. Friends, all of us are aware that we are passing through a very critical phase of life at this juncture. Being unseated from our hitherto secured seats in all aspects of life. And the cause is, of course, we all know, the pandemic that has hit the entire world. Its tentacles have spread everywhere and have not spared the academic world either. We teachers and students are in troubled waters now, and we are not good swimmers also. Our respected principal, sir, has enumerated has highlighted all the problems regarding the new modes of teaching, and every word is true, and we are facing all the problems now. With educational institutions remaining closed for more than 4 months now, we are constantly, trying to adjust to the new normal, to the modes of the new normal, watching a paradigm shift in the educational front also. That is why we are planning, we are devising new ways and means so that we can make the best use of technology and we can reach out to our students and vice versa. For many of us, however, the concept of online learning is restricted to the mere use of certain downloaded applications on our mobile phones or computers. But I'm sure there exists a vast repertoire of ideas and methods which can help us make teaching learning more interesting, more communicative, and more effective. The purpose of today's webinar is to open our eyes to these. And we are thankful to Professor Dr. Parthasarathy Mukhopadhyay of Kolkata University, who has kindly consented to be the resource person, and I'm sure he will guide us through our journey. Thank you once again for attending this webinar, and welcome you all once again on behalf of the Central Library and the IQAC of Dhruv Chand Haldar College. So it's over to Shudeshna now.
Thank you very much, Madam Sudokshina Sengupta. Now I like to take the opportunity to invite our esteemed speaker, Professor Dr. Partho Sarathi Mukhopadhyay, to kindly deliver his lecture.
Hello. Good day to all of you. Am I audible enough?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So, on behalf of myself and on behalf of college, I welcome all the delegates present here virtually. And I completely agreed with the views given by the respected principal sir and IQAC madam, IQAC in charge. But the situation is that, because of this particular pandemic situation, we are actually bounded to have some alternative forms of education, that is called Plan B of education. But during my deliberation, throughout my deliberation, I will actually disagree with this particular point that e-learning is, suitable to combat only with the pandemic situation. In fact, what I am going to tell you that e-learning is here, came to stay with us for the near future, and rightly so because of the different factors related with the higher education scenario of our country. So let me start my presentation. I will keep my video off during presentation because of the bandwidth limitation. So just wait for 5-10 seconds so that I can switch over to my presentation.
Okay, sir. After presenting, may I allow you?
Anyone respond me? Can you see my slide now?
Unmute one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can see.
Please. Okay, thank you.
Sir, make it a full screen, please, sir.
Okay now?
Sir, we can see the slides.
Hello?
Sir, we can see. Yes, sir. It's okay. Sir, absolutely okay.
Okay. In fact, there will be 5-10 seconds delay what I'm showing you and you are seeing actually. That is called,
Okay,
So my topic of deliberation is, title is towards virtual learning environment. As Madam Sudokshina Madam rightly pointed out that everything is e-learning for us. If I am using a PowerPoint slide, it is a smart classroom. Most of the college, at least one classroom is smart for every section. So when I am utilizing my PowerPoint slide in a LCD projector, that called e-learning is an umbrella term. So we need to differentiate between the different, terminologies in the plane of e-learning. Virtual learning is one little phase of e-learning. E-learning started way back in late 80s in the form of other things, but with the net and other asynchronous synchronization, we are actually progressing from digital learning environment to and then managed learning environment. So everything, the blended learning, or a judicious mixing of traditional learning and virtual learning, all comes in between, including books. So I'll be explaining one by one what are the different kind of concepts associated with it. Because nowadays, as a teacher, you are all subject experts. You know what is the knowledge. But other two facets we have to address now. That is the need of the time. One is that where is the knowledge? How to find out, how to discover different kind of open knowledge resources, open access resources, so that we can utilize seamlessly those particular resources inside our e-learning system. And then how to disseminate, different e-learning system to our learners. That is called how part of the teaching, learning, evaluation. So all three facets of education, teaching, learning, evaluation, are actually addressed by virtual learning or managed learning. And I will be, showing you the static presentation with the PPT file, as well as I will try to show you a live demonstration what we are doing in the University of Kodlani, particularly for our department, so that you can have an idea that what you can do in your college. And fortunately, what the proposal of the methodology I am going to show you here, you can adapt it without paying a single paisa to anyone. You can itself in your college yourself you can a particular methodology. So let's start. You admit it or not, you believe it or not, the paradigm shift already happened. E-learning has started, in my point of view, e-learning has started the moment our shift for different kind of information resources changed from print domain to electronic domain. For example, nowadays we are utilizing lot many e-journals and lot many e-books. So we started like paradigm shift in our information resources, information sources in the late 90s. So right from that period of time or that point of time, e-learning actually triggered by academia. Let me tell you that four fundamental factors apart from these pandemic issues, but I seriously I do not believe that pandemic issues actually compelled us to move towards the e-learning. It has got its own reason. I will be discussing that. But before that, the process are changing the way we behave with circle. The scholarly communication process is changing, and the change is actually based on the four fundamental factors. One is the open and distributed information system, what we colloquially call internet. Then enter in the open source software and open standards. Possibly you utilize Firefox web browser or Google Chrome web browser to access this Google Meet. So enter this web browser, web server are based on open source software. 95% of the web servers are running on the top of Linux flavors, some kind of Linux flavors, so all operating systems. Then 99% of the web servers are using Apache Web Server. It's a project of Apache Group, and it's an open source software. So my point is that internet is built on the top of open source software and open standards. That's why this kind of rapid development, rapid growth is possible. Now, on the top of these two factors, internet as open distributed information system and different kind of ingredient like open source software and open standards. So on the top of these two ingredients, we are getting two beautiful byproducts. One is called open access publishing system, and the next one is called open learning system. And these two systems actually inseparable from each other. You cannot imagine an open learning system without open access resources. Similarly, the objective of open access resources finally to teach something to someone. So these two are basically inseparable from each other, and these two we need to know as teachers. This is our again the paradigm shift happened here in the scholarly communication process. Now, as I said, the paradigm shift happened. How can I prove that particular thing? It's already happened. Do not take my word. You just go by the data and statistics. So here I have collected data. You can see here blue bar and maroon bar. Blue bar indicates number of new print journal introduced in a given year, covering all subjects of the universe of knowledge. So here you see from 91, it's around it. New print journal introduced in that particular year. So maroon bar actually indicates online journal. So first online journal appeared in 1996. Physics people started developing it in Los Alamos University. So first online journal, the Higher Press, came from Los Alamos University in the year 1996. Now you see, within 4 years, it outnumbered actually print journals, and you see the result in 2006. After 2006, I have discarded the graph because it's almost the same trend. So here you see the number of new online journal introduced around 3,000 and print journal reduced to 45. The complete opposite scenario from 1991. So that is called a paradigm shift. Now if we come to the another important resource we academia use, particularly books. So what is happening there, you can see here. Here you see that I have given here data related to users of ebook and revenue generated by ebook. It's basically a future projection from 2017 to 2024, and you see here constantly it is increasing from 2017 to 2024, and as far as users are concerned, this is also increasing. So this is actually these statistics generated from a very famous statistical site service that is called Statistica. They are very famous for future projection of growth. So this is happening both in case of e-journals and e-books. But one silver line in the cloud is that most of the cases, e-journals and e-books are available in some kind of open access channels. So here lies the role of the library professionals in a given academic institution, because they are the master of search. So they need to know where these resources are available, how they are distributed, how to integrate those resources inside our e-learning system. And by 2015, you can see here this projection done by a very reputed organization that is called OCLC, the people who run WorldCat, the biggest cryptographic database of the world. So they made a future projection that by 2015, already almost 50% of these resources available in some of the open access channels, and by 2040, everything will be open access. The mode of publication will be switching over to digital and open. So that is the future. Future is open actually. So you need to know this particular aspect, particularly library professionals. They need to serve academic colleagues. Now, as principals have pointed out, a very important thing that students are feeling a strong sense of isolation. Quite true, because this requires a network connectivity. This requires devices like smartphone at the least or laptop to connect. But here again, you see the situation is changing, rapidly. You all know there is a low-cost computer system developed recently, which is called Raspberry Pi. Every hardware is open and software is also open. So it's a very low-cost, tablet that is called Phablet. Actually, it includes phone plus tablet along with all kind of facilities and accessories you are having in a laptop. So recently, in July 4, 2020, that company launched Qt Pi, Raspberry Pi derivative. So that will be available only against $169 initially, and within 6 months it will be reduced to something like $90 or $80 to $90. And government of developing countries are planning to have a mass-scale production through technology transfer of this Qt Pi, and it will be distributed to our BPL cardholder students free of cost. And in future, possibly, if this pandemic situation goes on in the next 1 year or 1.5 years, possibly in future college and universities will be receiving, equipment grant in place of the building grant. We do not need building now. We need grants for equipment so that we can support our, low-income group students or the students who are basically belonging to the disadvantaged section of the society. So both in the case of resources, it is open, and the software we will be using, it will be open source. I'll be showing you what we have done done by using an open source software, and the devices which our end learners will be utilizing to connect to our different kind of e-learning services will also be available almost free of cost to them. Those who can afford, they will buy. Those who cannot afford, it is the responsibility of the college to give them proper support in terms of equipment. And this kind of Raspberry Pi based computer, you can search Google for Raspberry Pi, it is going to make a big revolution in the coming years. So this kind of computer or tablet will be distributing. So this is again a solution as our principals are mentioned. Now, I'm coming here that why e-learning is much more important, much more a bigger concept in compared with or by considering it as a plan B in the pandemic situation. So it's basically, it is almost the plan A of higher education in India. So let me explain one by one. First one is one factor is the population explosion. More people are alive now than have lived and died in the entirety of human history put together. So it means that when your population explosion is there, much more people will be attracted to higher education. And what is the college density in India? College density is a ratio, a very important ratio of higher education. It indicates the number of colleges a country is having against per lakhs of eligible people. Who are the eligible people? People belonging to the age group of 18 to 23 are considered as eligible people for higher education, and college density is a number that indicates number of colleges against per lakhs of eligible people. And you believe it or not, I'm sure you are not going to believe me, the national average of college density in our country is only 28. So we have only 28 colleges per lakhs of people who are eligible for higher education. So here we are lacking like anything. If we compare our numbers and figures with other developing countries like Brazil and China and South Korea, there is a sea difference between the numbers. So that is one point. Second point is that information explosion. So after population explosion, it is information explosion. In 1 minute, it is actually calculated by Pew Internet Research Group, again a very reputable internet research group. They calculated presently we are getting in 1 minute gigabytes of textual data. Of textual data is not a matter of joke. 10 gigabytes of textual data is equivalent to 100 libraries. If you digitize the collection of 100 college libraries, that will only become 10 gigabytes. So because of the different kind of blogs, social networking tools, different kind of social networking tools, academic channels, they are producing information, and every minute we are actually having 10 GB of textual data. And this 10 GB of textual data, it's basically we are actually losing our path in the jungle of information. It's nowadays it is very difficult to retrieve, check, judge, authenticate a piece of information before utilizing. So that is another problem. And third problem is that because of the more people are coming towards higher education in teaching, learning and research, and more people are basically producing lot many information, as a result what is happening, the result is that we are rapidly progressing in the knowledge circle. So knowledge is always dynamic, but this dynamic nature of knowledge is actually reached its peak during our time. So this is called information economy. You look around yourself, most of the technologies you are utilizing, the major focus is information. Never has information been so important like your smartphone, like your laptop, like your desktop, like most of the devices you are utilizing present days, either it is processing information or communicating information. So that is another factor. And because of this three factor like population explosion, information explosion lot many information and lot many technological resources to process and communicate that information is actually making our job much more tough. So what is happening now? What we teach our students in their very first year in the college or university, that become outdated when they graduate. So in this way, so UGC recommended that every 3 years we need to change our syllabus, but that is falling back. That is also failed to keep pace with the changing knowledge. So every student, when they graduate or when they got their knowledge already become outdated or obsolete. So that is again another problem in case of higher education. If we come to our country, so this is basically the global scenario. Every country is facing these problems. But if we come to the higher education scenario of our own country, then 3 factors I would like to mention, and I would like to seek your attention as teacher or academia, that these 3 particular factors require to be addressed. One is the higher education scenario in India. Second is the demographic bonus. It's a new concept. I will be explaining what is demographic bonus. And some of you already teachers who belonging to the political science, sociology, they already know what is demographic bonus. And third factor is the budget of higher education. So if we go one by one to the latest All India Education reports 1819 session, the latest report available. You can download from the weak site. I will be sharing this PPT, so don't worry about all kind of URLs and other things. You will be having this PPT in the reference. You can download the full report from here. I have just given here one summary snapshot kind of thing. We have 1,000 plus universities, 40,000 plus colleges, and 10,000 plus standalone institutions. So it's quite our educational system is quite big, and this is actually a mix-up. We have dual mode universities, we have distance mode universities. 1/3 of these universities are located in different rural areas. These are all good things. But the bad thing is that we may be one of the biggest system of the world, biggest higher educational system in the world, but we are not the finest. Why? What are the ailing factors of our higher education system, and who are actually relevant against those particular ailing factors? I will be explaining one by one. First factor, you see, if you can see the map of India here, this map is slightly different. Here we call it GER map, Gross Enrollment Ratio Map of India. You see our national average of gross enrollment. Gross enrollment, you all know that that particular ratio actually determine that how many people are actually getting attracted to your higher. So gross enrollment ratio national average is 26.3 as per the latest report. But you see the unemployment within the country. If you go to the Delhi NCR zone, it is around 50.6, highest in the country. If you come down to the southern part of the country, again it is higher than the national average led by Tamil Nadu with 49.0. But if you go through the entire west, central and eastern part of the country, so we are all lagging behind, including West Bengal. We have 19.3, whether the GR rate of national average is 26.3. Some of the northeastern states are doing very good, again some are doing very bad. So if you go to the Jharkhand, Bihar, again the unevenness. I talk about college density. If you again talk about college density is highest in the Bangalore urban district in the state of Karnataka. It goes to 83 per lakhs of students. If you come to Bihar, it is only 7 per lakhs of students. If you go to Assam, it is only 8 students. So great unevenness within the country, both in terms of college density as well as gross enrollment ratio. So gross enrollment ratio is a very important factor. Now, in the next slide, you can see I have compared gross enrollment ratio of comparable Asian countries, which are Asian tigers. So, Asian tigers are South Korea, Japan, China, and India. If you see this green line indicates the higher education in terms of gross enrollment ratio of South Korea. So it actually reaches almost 85. Now, if you go through this blue dotted line, this actually represents Japan. Japan touched almost 63. If I go through the red line, that indicates China, and saffron line indicates India. So you see, we started better than China in the decade of 70s. Then we fought neck to neck up to 1994. Then 1994, China made a quantum jump and they reached up to 49.3, and we are still struggling with 26.3. Now 1994 is of China. Similarly, 2018 needed to be very important year. I will be coming why I am saying this. But you please observe here, please take a note here that 1994 China made a revolution. They made a quantum jump. They invested huge amount of money in restructuring higher education because of certain reason. And that certain reason is called demographic bonus. But I will be coming to that. Before that, why I am saying gross enrollment ratio is that important? Why it is so important? Because you see, education is a very familiar field. Nobody considers you good enough if you are not contributing back to the knowledge pool. If we are only consumer of knowledge, no one is going to give us due importance. The moment we start contributing back to the knowledge pool, people start recognizing. So to prove that particular point, that our contribution towards the development of the knowledge pool is actually again quite bad in terms because of the poor gross enrollment ratio. Here I tried to prove my point here. You can see there is a Scopus database, a bibliographic database, which actually Scopus indexes almost 63,000 journals. So all the journals are basically indexed. It's a bibliographic database. We compiled that bibliographic database, the academic output country-wise. Now you see the result, 5 years, 1906 to 2019.
Okay, I understand.
United States during this period actually 40 million research paper. China is a distant second, but they produce 60 million research paper. India still managed position in top 10. We are in the 9th position, only 16.70 million paper. Whereas United Kingdom, which is basically the size of a big district of India, not more than that, they produce 34 million research papers. So there lies the important. The research output is directly proportional to the gross enrollment ratio. If we fail to attract, attract talents inside our higher educational institutional classrooms, then definitely our contribution will also be very poor, and it is actually reduced. So I'm coming to, as I mentioned, that demographic bonus is going to be very important in future. Now, what is demos who do not have this particular concept? For them, I am telling only that in a given country, when working age population, that is people belonging to the age group of 15 to 64, is higher than the non-working age share of the population, people below 14 and people higher than 65, that is our senior citizens. So they are also called dependent people, and these are called working people. When your working age population is larger or higher than the non-working age population, it is called that the country is having a demographic bonus, and it's a very rare event for a country. It only comes under 500 years or 700 years. So you see the present situation in India, and why I said that 2018 needed to be very important year for India, because we are already 2 years late. You see here on the top of 2018 data, we calculated, actually this is available at populationreview.com, that is the site. The median age of India, the country India, is 28.1. But if you go for the other comparable Asian countries, Japan is the oldest country in Asia, 47.3, followed by China, 37.4, almost 10 years younger. And an average Indian will be 10 years younger than an average Chinaman in the coming years. And you can see the others data. UK 40.5. Germany is the oldest in the Asian, European countries, 47.1. So India will be the youngest country of the world for the coming 34 years. In fact, we got a 37-year window. We already lost 2-3 years. So I'm telling you that's why the coming 34 years will be very important for India, because most of the young workforce will be available in our country. But that's basically a double-edged kind of system. If we fail to channelize that young pool of manpower into different kind of constructive activities, educational channels, then they will become unemployable, unskilled. So if they become unemployable, then there will be lot many social unrest is awaiting for the country in future. So this is the high time that we actually take a note about the demographic bonus of the country. Now, demographic only factor for development of the research output. Here you see, I had shown here what happened with the Asian countries, both the success and failure. You see here, Japan entered in this demographic bonus period in 1964. So they enjoyed a 40 years window. There it is ended for them by 2004. And you all know the spectacular growth made by Japan during this demographic bonus period. If you come to China entered here in 1994. That's why I am saying China made a quantum jump in higher education in 1994, because they realized they need to utilize this young workforce. So 1994 they entered inside the demographic bonus window, and for them it will be ended by 2000. For India and China made during this period, within the last 10-15 years, China increased their GDP in 7-fold. But if you come to India, India entered already 2018. We got 37 years of demographic bonus. For us, it will be ending by 2055. Now the Brazil also got the same facilities. Brazil entered in demographic bonus window in 2006. For them it will be ended by 2038. But you see, Brazil only made 2-fold increase in their GDP. They have not invested. They have not restructured their higher education system, make their workforce skillful. So we need to learn from Brazil, and need both our neighborhoods, China and Japan. And where in the bottom part of the screen, you can see we started, our working age population, how it is reducing from the decade of 70s up to 2018. From 2018, our working age population is increasing, and again from 2055, our non-working age population or dependent age population will be increasing. So these are the facts related to higher education of India. Now the third factor is the budget. Now there actually, the big bad news is that when we need lot many investment, lot many infrastructural revolution in our higher education, our budget of higher education is shrinking. 3 days back when National Education Policy came out, they actually given a target that within 5-10 years it will be by 2030 the gross enrollment, because of the gross enrollment ratio, we need to increase up to 50 from 26.3, and budget will be 6% of GDP. But you see the present situation, then you up to you whether you are going to believe that policy or not. So the present situation is really very hard. You see, in 2014-15 to 2017-18 data, if we analyzed, as higher education expenditure as percentage of central budget, it is from 6.15 and reduced to 3.71. Now I have latest data also. Data is basically 14-15 to 19-20 financial year. So here in the first part you can see we are going for the percentage of educational expenditure as percentage of total government expenditure. It is also reducing from 4.14 to 3.40 constantly. And if we consider the higher education expenditure as percentage of GDP, it is also reducing from 0.53 to 0.45. So constantly it is reducing. Now it is hard to believe from 0.45 we will be suddenly jumping to 6% of GDP.
Please listen, लिख लेगा ना पर.
Third factor related to the higher education scenario of India. So as the whole, as I said, that higher education is basically suffering from a few ailing factors. These are the ailing factors we analyzed after going through the entire AISHE report. Low GER, uneven quality, as I said, shortage of educators. The PTR, people to teacher ratio in India for college level it is 30, for university level it is 20. Quite high in compare with the higher education PTR in other developing countries. Unemployable youth because of lack of the skilled education, and low students progression. Another important factor, our student progression is only 0.5. That means the people who are actually entering inside the higher education, only 0.5% of that total of the people who registered in higher education are actually obtaining a PhD degree, or they are producing their doctoral dissertation. Again, the fallacy is that in India, including college and university, we offer altogether 187 courses. But 80% of the students are actually taking only 10 courses. So again, unevenness. And most of the students in higher education registering in arts, humanities and social sciences, but most of the PhD degree holders are from STEM group, science, technology, engineering and management. So these are the fallacies of Indian higher education, and it is actually coupled with the factor of low higher education budget. So solution, we need to have a solution. As you see, I'll be coming to that, but again I will be, I will be seeking your attention in this 6 projects of HRD as our benchmark for higher education. One is called NAD, National Academic Depository. These are all good projects and futuristic projects. What is National Academic Depository? In future, higher education students will be having their mark sheets and certificates directly, just like they download the NET certificate nowadays. Similarly, they will be able to download their mark sheets and certificate directly from NAD. So no college and universities in future are going to distribute certificate. So this is basically meant for the easy transcription of the result, easy cross verification of the result by the global companies. So NAD it is already operating at the university level. It will be operating at the college level in the coming few years. Second is the SWAYAM and SWAYAMPRABha. You all know SWAYAM is the MOOCs platform of the country, and SWAYAMPRABha is a sister project of SWAYAM. Because of the poor bandwidth, our students of SWAYAM courses, they cannot access video tutorial because of the poor bandwidth. So SWAYAMPRABha is a DTH project where SWAYAM content will be delivered to the television set of the students directly. Then comes the Project Imprint and Project ARIA. These two projects are going to support innovative e-learning projects given by the teachers. Huge funding is available. You can all start applying for the Project Imprint and Project ARIA. NIRF, you all know, it's basically the ranking of universities and colleges in India. It's already very popular. And recently Ministry of HRD started one particular project called Know Your College, so that every college must have a presence, web presence in the Ministry of HRD Know Your College portal, so that students can compare and they can select their college for given. 7 projects actually running by the government of India, Ministry of HRD, alongside the help of with the help of different state agencies for the futuristic view of higher education. And what government of India proposed, that I will be discussing, but before that we need to know some kind of idea. Because as Madam said, we teachers consider everything e-learning, distribution of the soft copy of the lecture note, distribution of PowerPoint slide through mail. These are all e-learning. These are actually ICT enabled learning. All ICT enabled learning are e-learning. So e-learning is a generic term, but there is a distinction of term, as I said, digital learning environment. That means when you are providing your structured coursework over the network in an interactive mode, that is called digital learning environment. When digital learning environment is actually coupled with or merged with different kind of synchronous and asynchronous mode of communication. Asynchronous mode of communication means you are not connected real time. Your email, your blog, then your discussion forum, your mailing list, these are all called asynchronous mode of communication. And what is synchronous mode of communication? When you are connecting, two ends are connected in real time. For example, this kind of web conferencing system, video conferencing, internet relay chat, these are all called synchronous mode of communication. So digital learning environment, when matched up or merged with all kind of synchronous and asynchronous mode of communication, we call it virtual learning environment. It supports actually teacher to teacher, teacher to learner, learner to learner communication during teaching, learning, evaluation, all three facets. Then comes the managed learning environment. It's slightly futuristic, but already happening in different parts of the world, including India. So what is managed learning environment? It means when your digital virtual learning environment is actually merged with your different institutional subsystem, like your admission system, like your financial management system, like your library, because nowadays in virtual learning environment or managed learning environment, library needs to be there, and it is their responsibility to push different kind of library services inside the e-learning workflow. So when this kind of seamless integration of different components of an institution, be it examination system, be it admission, be it finance management system, be it library system, then we call it a managed learning environment. Then what is a MOOC? MOOC is basically all these DLE, VLE and MELE are meant for an institution or a group of institution. But MOOCs is basically an initiative of pan-institutional learning control. So that means because of the huge infrastructural need, only a state government, only a national government or a consortium of universities or colleges can provide that kind of environment. So MOOCs is basically a kind of virtual learning environment, but the target is to cover any number of courses inside the platform and any number of students inside the platform. So that is basically the way, this way actually MOOCs are different from virtual learning. Virtual learning is meant for a single institution or a group of institution, whereas MOOCs is basically the scope is actually national or global sometimes, and huge infrastructure requirement is required to address the issue, any number of courses for any number of students. And what is blended learning? When any of these DLE, VLE, MELE or MOOCs, you are integrating with your traditional learning environment, like your brick and mortar classroom-based teaching, learning, evaluation, then we call it blended learning, mixing of any of the components of e-learning alongside your traditional learning environment. So these are called actually blended learning, and one Indian higher educational system cannot have a fully operable or fully operating e-learning system like VLE or MELE, which wise. So this transition period of coming 2 years, it will be dominated by the blended learning. And the percentage of e-learning will be increasing slowly. You see already UGC passed a regulation that a PG student can have 20% of the total course credit from attending SWAYAM courses. Similarly, that kind of instruction or government order will be coming for UG courses in future. Now we started with 20%, then it will be 50%, and so on. So in this way we are progressing step by step. So presently we are having a blended learning environment in the higher education scenario of the country. And they daily or MLE or VLE or MOOCs or blended learning, your primary component or unit of e-learning is called digital learning object. Now, what is a digital learning object? Definitions I have given, but I am trying to explain in very simple terms. So, suppose you are having a PowerPoint slide to explain a given concept to your students. When that PowerPoint slides is attached with metadata, who developed it, for whom it has been developed, when it has been developed, what is the prerequisite to go to this particular PowerPoint slide, what is the software requirement to run this PowerPoint slide. So all these are called metadata of that particular digital learning object. So when your PowerPoint slides is attached with this kind of metadata or description of the slides, alongside the licensing, what licensing you are allowing to the end user for utilizing it. So these are called Creative Commons licensing. There are 6 variants of Creative Commons licensing. The liberal, most liberal one is CC0, we call it CC BY, and the most restrictive is CC BY NC ND. CC BY means anyone can utilize for any lawful purpose, not anything. They can adapt it, they can utilize it, they can distribute it, they can redistribute it. So all kind of freedoms are attached. Then the strictest one is basically the CC BY NC ND. It means that particular object anyone can use for their learning purposes, but for non-commercial use and for non-derivative work. That means you cannot derive anything on the top of it without acknowledging that one, and you cannot utilize for your commercial, you cannot utilize for any kind of commercial purposes. So we are quite, free from this kind of, because none of the Indian higher education system is a commercial one. We do not sell our courses. So, but please remember, when you are utilizing a DLO developed by others, you please see the attached licenses with it. It is actually completely different between there is a complete difference between the copyright and copyleft. Creative Commons is basically supporting the copyleft movement. That means the creator of this particular knowledge object is giving this free for others. So that is the motto. Different degree of freedoms are there, and you please go through the Creative Commons licensing. There is a very good Wikipedia article, you can have it, or they have a full-fledged website, you can go through it. In one reading you can understand what does it mean. So Creative Commons licensing is very important for teachers who are very much interested in e-learning. Now, as I said, that virtual communication tools are also playing important role. I already discussed this. I am skipping this slide. So definitions and Now, what is the major difference between really attachment is basically, you see, the differences is very visible here in this slide. Okay, so here you see in case of BLE, the learning materials and resources available within the system. That's a major point of difference, and our friends from libraries should take a note for it, because in case of VLE, learning materials and resources must be available within the system, and in case of a TLE, traditional learning environment, resources are available within a library or information center unit. So what does it mean? When you take a class, after the class you give us a list of references, then your student go to the library, then they collect the materials and either borrow it or read it there. Gone are the days for that kind of pool model of libraries. Previously libraries were pooling users. Now libraries need to follow the push model of information. What is that push model? Within the VLE, your library must be present there. Suppose learner is going through a particular set of instruction, particular set of course material, then the moment they need some information, presence of the library inside the e-learning system, and it is the duty of the library to provide the resources inside that system, so that they don't have to leave that particular e-learning system. So that is a major difference in TLE, and role of libraries will be very important forthcoming virtual learning environment. In case of VLE, have online assessment, you have examination. Online assessment and examinations again are two different concepts. Examination means you are having a protected environment for taking examination. But you take your online assessment or e-learning courses, every resource under the sun available with your student. So this is not environment. You cannot check whether your students are taking unfair means or not. So that's why it's very important for a teacher to know, to learn how to frame open-ended questions. So in case of our traditional examination, you see, it's basically with a memory. So now we cannot follow that thing because under the sun everything is available to your resource. They can take the help of Google, they can take the help of Wikipedia to answer a factual question. So in place of factual question, what, when, how, who, this kind of questions, we are going to have open-ended question which requires their own judgment, own values. So that's again a difference. The most important difference from the user point of view. In case of BLE, it is basically user-driven schedule. But in case of TLE, we are following institution-driven time. So what does it mean? That in case of a traditional learning environment, we follow the factory model of education. What do we do? We bring the raw materials, the students inside our classrooms or inside our institution, timetable. Then we process them there, and finally, when the processing is over, we send them to the job market. So this is basically the the model we are following, that is called the factory model of education. What Alvin Toffler said in 1984, that factory model of education, that is one topic you are giving 1 hour lecture for all kind of students, be it meritorious student, be it the slightly backbencher students. So we give only 1 hour of time for a given lecture, and how many times we can repeat it? Mostly 2 times or 3 times, not more than that. Because our academic calendar do not permits that. But in case of a VLE, that will be completely user-driven time and learning schedule. So it's like the factory model of education. If a student is not quite, conversant with a given concept, then he or she can repeat the courses, your lectures, which is basically the video lectures, for any number of times. For any number, it is not possible in case of traditional learning environment. In case of traditional learning environment, we have only classroom. Here we can have classroom. Directly we can imitate our classroom in a virtual mode. I am going to show you. But we have different kind of other learning support system. We can have discussion forum, we can have chat room, we can have video conference, we keep blogs and many more things. And fourth point is that in case of a traditional learning environment, we can use beyond the class hours. I simply do not know what my students are doing after my class hours, how they are interacting, what problems they are facing. But in case of a monitor, so this is actually powered by the sophisticated monitoring and tracking system. I can exactly know that at what particular frame, at what rate my student is withdrawing from themselves from my video tutorial, so that I can have a chance to look at that particular frame, that particular point, that particular minute, to change the video tutorial accordingly. So enormous amount of scopes are presently available inside VLE for a teacher as well as for a learner. So these are the major differences between VLE, virtual learning, and traditional learning. Now, Government of India is giving us both technical guidelines as well as guidelines. So these are called technical architecture and content level architecture. So both are very important for us. So what the Government of India is proposing? They are proposing a 4-layer architecture. Say at the core of the code, you need to have a DLS or IDR, or this we call presently LOR, Learning Object Repository. So Learning Object Repository will be acting as the core point of your system, where all kinds of lecture notes, slide presentation, video tutorial, in a structured manner it will be uploaded. Then at the front end, we have many names for this kind of system. Some people call it LMS, Learning Management System. Some people call it CMS, Content Management System. Some people prefer to call it LCMS, Learning Content Management System. So Learning Content Management System, or LMS, will be the front end of your LOR, and your student can access resources. All three facets will be covered: teaching, learning, environment. So this is called a full layer architecture. And content level architecture, more important for a teacher like us. What is that? Coming to the content level. Government of India is actually guiding you in case of e-learning. That is a protocol given by the Ministry of HRD, that every learning in the country must be based on 4-quadrant approach. So what is 4-quadrant? That we need to understand very strongly. It says that if you look into your syllabus, now syllabus, your entire curriculum or syllabus includes many courses or papers. If you go to a particular course or paper, it includes units. If you go to a particular unit, it includes actually topics. So Ministry of HRD guiding you that as a teacher, you need to target topic against now each topic of learning supported by 4 parameters or 4 quadrant. Quadrant 1 is here you can see e-tutorial or video tutorial. Quadrant 2 is that means you are preparing a summary note or a PowerPoint slide or in the different kind of format you can have. It's the text format related to that particular. Then after your quadrant 1 video tutorial and quadrant 2 text format is over, you need to target the quadrant 3, that is the reading. So list of further reading means that you need to select. It's very it seems that this is the easiest part of the e-learning, but I found it is the toughest part of the e-learning. You can easily prepare a 30 minutes video tutorial. It's not a matter of for you. You are the subject expert. You can easily write 10-12 pages of text on the topic as a summary note. But when you are targeting systematic exposition of the subject or the related to the topic, in the form of open access resources, in a standard format like APA, MLA, IEEE, or Nature. So that is actually the toughest job for a teacher in e-learning scenario. Although apparently it seems the easiest job of these quadrants. So here librarians can help you much. They can identify many open access resources, but Government of India categorically says that open access resources are preferred. Why? Now suppose against a particular topic, I have given a list of references, in 90% of which are only available commercially. My library do not subscribe or do not have to have those resources. But there is no point in giving that kind of references. So you have to prepare a systematic list of exposition which actually give your student a systematic exposition of the topic. And most of them must be available in open access channel under Creative Commons licensing. So that is quadrant 3, and quadrant 4 is the evaluation part. You can prepare MCQ test, short answer type questions, video based comprehension test, audio based comprehension test. So lot many innovative kind of examination systems are coming apart from your MCQ based test and short answer type test. Again, research is going on how machine can evaluate by utilizing AI and machine learning, how machine can evaluate a descriptive questions also. So in coming future, it will be, presently it is not available. It can evaluate MCQ readily, it can evaluate short answer type question readily, but not the descriptive questions, but definitely within coming 1 year or 1.5 year, that kind of facility will be available inside the learning content management system. And Moodle, the software we are utilizing, open source software we are utilizing for our coursework, that is supporting actually 36 types of MCQ. In case of NET and SET and your traditional examination, you can see only 5 to 6 types of MCQ. But in LCMS of any kind, we can have 37 types of different kind of MCQ. So this is the quadrant, as I said. Now, let me show you something in live demonstration, so that we can understand that how we can develop it free of cost. So I am now going to my browser.
দীপ হ্যাঁ উনি আছেন, প্রেজেন্টিং এই আছেন।
So
তুমি
this
এখানে
is
বসো, তুমি প্লিজ এখানে বসো, আমি ভিডিও অন করব না, চিন্তা করছো না।
system we are running. I hope you can see my browser now. Anyone can please respond?
Yes sir, we can see.
Fine. Okay. So side by side, I'm opening two of our courses. We are right Moodle Cloud.
দেখো Moodle
I will explain how you can utilize this, but first to see in practice that how you this is the problem. I often forget my passwords.
আচ্ছা একটা কোয়েশ্চেন এসেছে, ইজ e-learning in India successful with low bandwidth internet?
Okay, finally it worked. First, I'm trying to show you that this is the course we are running for our 4th semester students. So suppose this is the syllabus and papers are there. Now I am taking any paper. So these are called courses in a CBCS system. So this is the course LIS 405A Library Service Platform. You don't have to know the topic. You see, mostly you just imagine this particular system against your given subject area. Now, if I go to my course, this library service platform, a particular course of 2 credit, 50 marks. So the generic section is related with the objectives of the course. Then we run a glossary. This is called collaborative glossary. What we do, initially it is slightly difficult to, involve your students in e-learning. They will be missing like us the traditional classroom environment. So what we try there to prepare a collaborative glossary. Now what is a glossary? I, as a teacher of this particular course, I defined a set of keywords related to that particular topic, and allow my students or given my student task that everyone needs to define this 50, suppose we have 20 students in a course, so we divide that every student need to cover 3 topics, and apart from that 3 topics, they need to give 7 to that particular area alongside the definition in wiki style. So I can see here who submitted this one, which student submitted this one, then I can So this kind of system, when it will be over, most of the technical terms related to that particular area will be gathered. So that's a very good reference, and you are involving your students to generate knowledge. So that I will be recommending. This is easily available. And we can have announcement services, what new things are happening. We have chat services. So suppose one topic, one online class is over, one topic I have given a video tutorial, then I can declare, these are called doubt clearing session, that I will be available in the chat room during this, time. 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So my students already knows that through announcement, and they can join me to discuss different issues. So this is called chat room service. you can add always. I will be showing you that how you can add different kind of things. Then we have employed their classroom. So you see, most of the teachers are taking online through WebEx or Google Meet or Zoom for online classroom. In online classroom, you need to have a blackboard. You need to have the facility to remove something in the board, to highlight something in the board. A student need to, for any given could be a generic class, but there will be a chat also. So for that we are using a plugin inside Moodle. Here we are utilizing Moodle Cloud. You can see here, this is our address, Moodle Cloud. Any teacher can start a course in Moodle Cloud free of cost. They said it is available for 45 days, but courses are attended by the students regularly. Then they never delete your course. For example, this course we are running for the last 1.5 years. They never deleted our course because of the usage. If your course is popular, so Moodle Cloud will never delete your course. But if it is not utilizing up to a certain point of time, they will delete your course after 45 days. So it's a free. You don't have to pay anything. And we are not paying anything. So here we are utilizing Big Blue Button. It's this particular plugin available inside Moodle. So you can utilize that for developing your classroom kind of. You can click here and they can join your online classes. Every time you do not have to create different kind of Zoom links or WebEx links or Google Meet links. One link will be available when they will be you can join as a teacher. Your students can click here to join the classes here. So no concept of multiple links. Now, if we actually comes to the unit, say this is unit 1, so these are the topics under unit 1. So let us take that topic ILS transition. So if I go to the topic ILS transition, so first you see, and you can you don't have to follow that video first, then e-text first, then reading list, then MCQ. MCQ generally comes last, evaluation, but inside that you can start with anything. So for example, I have Sworden 3, that is the reading list. So first I give a reading list to them, then after the reading is over, I give them e-text. So if they click the text, they can go to the text. The entire PDF file is embedded there. It's an 8-page summary document on the topic. They can go through it, and either they can download, they can make a note, anything with reading list or references. Then after the reading is over, text reading is over, they can click for the, so this is called quadrant 2, that is the text part. And in quadrant 2 also I have given a PowerPoint slide. So if they click, they can go through this slide. Again they can download, they can make a note. So after this text part is over, that is quadrant 3 and quadrant 2 is over, then we give them quadrant 1, that is the video tutorial. So suppose this video tutorial we do not upload directly in Moodle because we are utilizing free cloud service. There is a restriction of size. We are having only 400 MB size. So within 400 MB, one particular video file may be of 800 MB of size. So what we do, we prepared a departmental channel, and in that particular channel we uploaded our videos and directly made an embedding here. Now what is embedding? Embedding means the moment my students click here in the video tutorial, that video tutorial will be embedded. It is not directly utilizing actually my resources. Now when they click, so you see it is coming from YouTube actually. So I can move forward. personal computer in different forms, CD-ROM technology, then mature local area network actually make library automation hooping victim. So I can move anywhere of architecture and infrastructure or web scale library management and SQS. Web scale library management simply means it's a subject indexing system like library of Congress subject heading list or Sears list of subject heading. Okay. You are based on, but the moment you are opening your library open through taxonomy or taxonomy, you are allowing your user to donate tags, your library automation system or your library data. So when this three quadrant is over, that is reading list, text and video tutorial, then I can set assignment. So they can submit assignment online. Then after assignment submission, I can have MCQ based evaluation, so they can appear for different kind of MCQ courses. So in this way we can develop and I can also publish result within 2 minutes of the examination, the entire grade book for a given unit or the entire grade book for the course also. So at the end of the course, I can give the final grade point along with the assessment, total 100 points. So in this way, we are running the courses and quite successfully. And again, I said that we have not spent a single paisa from university. It is free. If you are trying to have server inside your college, then Moodle is available as open source software. It's a very simple thing to install. It's a LAMP-based project actually, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So anyone can install. It requires little knowledge to install it, but as a teacher you need to know how to structure the courses. If your syllabus is structured, that means half of your e-learning job is over. You better concentrate on structuring the syllabus, or if it is not structured, you mentally prepare the structure, courses, units, inside the units topics. And every paper must have a further reading list. Then half of the job is over. Then you can enter inside Moodle, and it's a very easy to edit. So, for example, as a teacher, you can click in the gear sign here, gear symbol here, and you can click turn editing on. If the turn editing, I'm just trying to show you to build your confidence that it's very easy. There is nothing in e-learning as a software. E-learning is mostly conceptual, and teachers are masters in concepts and knowledge. So you can easily learn it. So for example, I want to add something new here. So here you see, I can always add two groups of things. One is the activities and one is called resources. So resources, this can be a file. So suppose you are having a PDF file, you click it here, it will again give you a form kind of thing, you upload your file. You can prepare a level kind of thing. So this kind of unit 1, this is called level. Then you can have a page in HTML format. You can link to an external resource in the form of URL. So in this way, these are required for building your different kind of courses. Suppose you want to embed a video. So here you can click the page. Let me show you. If you click add after clicking page, so it will give you the title. You have to give name here. Now in the YouTube you can have the source code for the embedded video. If you click here, it will give you an HTML source code writing options. Then here you can see, simply copy from YouTube and paste it there. So in this way you can do it. So again there is a page content. So if you click this HTML resource, you can test any kind of HTML. It's a very simple thing. Only once you need to go through this one, and Moodle, complete Moodle documentation available. You can download it, everything available free of cost. So now suppose I want to add an activity.
Samiksha,
You can see previously I added resource, so this can be a big button. You want to have a classroom here, you want to have a chat here, you want to have an external tool here, Moodle is now, LTI compatible. I will show you how library management system can be integrated. You can have a discussion forum, a glossary, quiz, MCQ test, and so on. You can prepare or plan your assignment submission process. It's really very easy. You just today itself you try to develop a course in Moodle Cloud, an experimental one. Try to involve 5-6 students, because we need to learn all these tools and techniques to survive in this, changing pace of. We need to keep pace with the changing patterns of higher education. So, any point of time when my job is over, I can turn editing off. Now, as I said that nowadays we can, integrate our library system inside the learning content management system that is called managed learning environment. Still, it is at the experimental level, but hopefully I will be able to show you something. So, any kind of resources I can integrate here. If you see the right hand side here, you can see. I am cryptographic database, search WorldCat and search in CAT, search my local library system and anything. Now suppose I want to search something in the databases. Now that can have subscribe resources, but most of the college libraries do not have subscribe resources like e-journal, electronic databases, etc. You have access to EndList, but that is not quite enough. So many open access resources are there. So suppose one academic search engine is there, base-search.net. So this is the site, base-search.net. Now you see there how easily we can integrate this kind of academic freely available. This is developed by Bielefeld Central Library of Germany. It covers around 210 million resources, open access resources, free of cost. Now you see how we have integrated this base inside our e-learning system. My student can, suppose they want to have, this is a course on cataloging. They want to have some idea on, say FRBR. FRBR is a concept related to cataloging. If my student search here, you see here, it will open up a search window inside the e-learning system. It is not allowing him to go outside. It will present the result from base here. And most of the cases you see, this is the symbol for open access from UNESCO. So most of these resources are available in full text open access, and they can click it here, they can download here. So 210 million resources available which you can integrate inside e-learning system. Then let me show you another experiment we are trying to do. We are presently, most of the college libraries are presently Koha. I do not know the situation in your college libraries, but if it is Koha or any other web-enabled software, if you are providing web-pack, that it can be done. So for example, my students want to search something in the title of the document related to God. Now, I want to search in my local library. As I said, libraries will be integral part of the e-learning system in future. So the moment I click search, here you see, it will contact my local library. Let me increase the size. It will contact my local library. You see here, it is available within the e-learning system. My students are very much here. And it is saying that it is this most of the books nowadays are available in open access resources. So this kind of system can search whether your book you have searched some open access channels or not. If my students click here, then you see it will generate the status of the book, how many copies are there, whether these copies are available in the library or not. And if my student wants, they can read the book here, or they can download the entire book if it is copyright free book or available through open access channel. Now if I click book reader, so here you see the reader will automatically load the book here. I can, just like Kindle, I can read the book. I can go to the first page immediately. So this is the library from where it is available. It is available mainly, it is coming from openlibrary.org. So I can go through it. I can search the book. Inside the book I can search. I can zoom in. I can zoom out. I can search here. I can download the PDF or EPUB format, and I can move forward and backward. So if presently your library do not allow you to search inside the content, but here you see this kind of tool allow me to search in content. So suppose I am searching, it's a books on Hindu gods, so I am searching by Vishnu. So it will search the entire book and it will page mark the result for me.
গুগল মিট কি খুব এফেক্ট করবে? ইউটিউবটা এফেক্ট করতে পারে।
And it can do many other things. Here you see, these are the page marks. So suppose I want to see what is happening here. So that particular page will be displayed. I can directly go to that particular page. It will automatically load that. So many things you can actually do with this kind of modern technologies, and everything we are doing here, all are open source, all are open standards, and we are not spending a single paisa. So that's all from my side, Subhesna, and I am now open for questions if any.
কে? হ্যাঁ, অনেকেই তো জানিয়েছে।
কি করলে?
এই আমি কিছু করিনি তো।
ওই আবার তোমার নিজের ছবিটা পোস্ট করেছি।
এই তো উনি।
Hello.
Yes, sir.
So I am done from my part.
Okay, okay, sir. Sir, there are some questions.
Yes, please.
Is e-learning in India will be successful with low bandwidth in rural areas?
Very good question. So as I said that content level and software level and device level, almost the society is ready. But bandwidth level, bandwidth infrastructure won't be, won't be updating rapidly. So, okay. So what, let me share you with the plan of the government of India. One is that we have in university, we enjoy NCAN connectivity. That is called NCAN network infrastructure. So that provides universities a 2 Gbps of connectivity. That particular NCAN connectivity will be now available up to college level in the next 6 months, and in the next 6 months it will be available up to the public library level. Each public library in a Gram Panchayat in every corner of India. We have almost 50,000 plus public libraries in the country. So each public will become the single, that is called point of presence of e-learning for government of India. All schools will be, college will be having NCAN. They don't have any kind of problem. So that single facility will be extended to all schools and the remote learners. And in this way, because e-learning cannot operate in isolation, we need partnership. So possibly public library based point of presence e-learning is the next plan of the government, and within 6 months it will be available up to college level, and next 6 months they are planning to expand the NCAN connectivity, which will be a 2 Gbps connectivity to the public libraries as point of presence. So that is the plan basically. But you pointed out again a very practical problem. But you see, things are changing very rapidly. If we cannot support 60% of our students, then should the 60% will be deprived because we cannot support the remote 15% of the students. So that should not be happening. That we need to take the point of view of an engineer. What we have, let us start with it, and things will be improving day by day.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is another question. How to teach subjects like mathematics online effectively, particularly when complex derivations are involved? then how can we make students understand in online mode?
Okay. I was expecting this question actually. Okay, I'm ready with this question. Why only mathematics, physics, biology, all science-based subjects? Second is your question has actually two components. How, as a teachers, we can address the demands related with different kind of practical lab-based subject, as well as abstract subject like mathematics, which depends largely on different kind of abstract concepts. Now another part is the student training. I'm starting with the second part of the question. Students do not need any kind of training. Students, again I am repeating, students do not need any kind of training. We, the teachers who are in the middle of our career, suddenly all on a sudden we have to learn lot many new things. We need training, because we teachers and our students are two different generations. Their generation is digital native. You give a complex computer system or a mobile system to any 10-year-old boy or girl, within 1 hour they will be coming up with all kind of acquaintance. But you give that to a 50 years old colleague, they will take at least 3 months to know every facilities available in that system. So they are digital native, we are digital immigrants. We need training. Our students do not need any kind of training. Don't worry about them. They will learn within one day different kind of system. That I have experienced enough. I am dealing with this e-learning for the last 10 years. I have enough experience with the students. They do not take time. Teachers take time to learn. First. Second is that if you can, if I can share my screen again, it's a very important thing. That's why I am sharing again. Here you can see what other college and universities are doing in different kind of science-based question. First, what our government planned. Here you can see the concept. Sudhashna, can you see my screen now?
So just a second.
Hello?
Sir, just a second, sir. Just a second.
It's coming.
Yes, sir.
Please
It's okay.
report me.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can see.
Okay, so as all the science teachers and those who are present, you please inform your colleagues who are not present here that Ministry of PhD started a new project which is called virtual labs. So all kind of practical experiments, still it is growing, lot many resources are not there, but it is actually trying to make a revolution in case of science-based subject teaching. So many virtual labs, prepared virtual lab, complete virtual labs will be available. Either link through REST API linking, so that is a linking possibility through REST API, or you can directly download in your local, you can link it with your LMS. Now, so these are the content level where this particular university is very famous for its virtual content, and all are available in open access mode, open access resources. So remote lab, you go for astrophysics, physics, mathematics, biology, all kind of virtual labs or completed virtual labs are already available for downloading or linking. Then after discovering a virtual lab program, this is basically a network of universities developed by UniLab of Spain. It's a university consortium. So please have a close look of this particular site and the actual lab site of Ministry of PhD. So these two will be the biggest repositories, and many other repositories are coming. So one repository I can tell you that is called Open Education Consortium. So this is a Pan World organization where teachers and students are coming together, researchers, they made a single platform. They are donating their different kind of learning resources, including virtual lab, different kind of experiments that you can download a link. Now the question comes, here you see, if you use Moodle, so there are a lot many plugins are there. One plugin is called EJS app. So it's a Java-based app through which you can link your e-learning system with any kind of remote lab-based system. Just you have incorporated the YouTube video through embedding. Just collect, click share button. It will create a HTML script that is called widget. You copy that widget inside your content in Moodle. Similarly, that kind of support is available in real time through EJS app. So you can go through the Moodle app. You can discover different other universities who are using it and different other repositories from where you can download it and you can utilize it. So this is one option. Second option is there, you can prepare a virtual lab things by recording your lab experiments and you can upload and you can link with your LCMS. So in this way, we are trying to solve the issues related to science teaching and things are improving like anything, presently. So I am quite hopeful that us definitely in future.
Thank you, sir. There is a last question. That is, what are some of the ways by which students can participate in e-learning in groups?
That is the concept is called group learning, and every LCMS supports group learning. Suppose you have 20 registered students in a particular course. You can create 4 groups with 5 students each. And each group you can allot different kind of tasks, different kind of activities, and different kind of margin possibilities. So this is called interactive group learning, IGL, and the facility is available in most of the LCMS. I am using Moodle. Moodle, it is already available. This is called IGL, interactive group learning.
Okay. Thank you, sir. There is no more question.
So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for this highly informative and enriching lecture, sir. We are indebted to you.
I do hope that you can see all the active screen activities I have done.
Yes,
real
all the
time.
screen activities we have seen, sir, clearly.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir.
So may I take leave now?
Oh, okay. Just actually we are going to conclude the session and
Okay.
just for 5 minutes, sir. Just.
Okay. No worry, I am here.
Thank you, our esteemed speaker, Professor Dr. Partho Sarathy Mukhopadhyay, to give us such an informative and enriching lecture on online teaching learning. That is the topic of the day and the need of the hour. Now I request the Teachers Council Secretary of Dhruvochand Haldar College, Dr. Rupa Acharya, to give the vote of thanks. Madam, please. Hello, Rupa ji.
Thank you, Sudeshna. I express my sincere thanks to our respected principal sir, Dr. Shottabrata Sahu, for providing us the opportunity to organize this webinar. I convey my heartfelt gratitude to the Honorable Speaker, Professor Dr. Partho Sarathy Mukhopadhyay, for delivering such an enriching lecture full of latest informations and concepts regarding e-learning scenario of higher education system of our country, its problems and probable solutions, government policies, etc., which is highly relevant to this fast-changing progress of teaching learning process. Thank you, sir. Thank you for such an informative presentation. My sincere thanks to all the respected audience for their overwhelming responses, patience listening, and nice interactions. On behalf of our college, I would like to congratulate our IQAC coordinator, Srimati Sudakshina Sengupta, and our librarian, Srimati Sudeshna Moitro for organizing such an amazing program. Last but not the least, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Deep Chandan Chakraborty, Assistant Professor, Ashutosh College, for providing us the entire technical support. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rupa Acharya, for staying with us. And on behalf of the entire team of Dhrubachand Haldar College, I sincerely thank Professor Dr. Parthasarathi Mukhopadhyay for giving us time. So now I officially conclude the webinar. Thank you all again.